my soul, it is well, it is well with my soul.
Let me take this opportunity to greet the Church of Christ here at Lake Cross this morning. Amen. Let me also welcome those of us who are watching us via the various social media platforms that we are streaming this service on. Let's take this day to be another wonderful time that God has given us. He has given us the chance to be here and to be able to share in His Word. So, for those of us who have seen the brochure, the passage, or rather the message we are going to share today, the title is Faith in Doubt. Now, just hearing those words, maybe for some of us it's already sounding a little bit paradoxical, because when you think about faith and doubt, you wouldn't think one should be in the other. The way we think about faith and the way we think about doubt, we usually consider faith to be on one end of the spectrum and then doubt on the other. So some of us could probably have been thinking, is this just another play on words? Is it just trying to be clever with the words? But it's not, because actually something that we read in the Bible, and I thought it was one of the lessons which, when Jesus was teaching, was important then and is also important today. So from the brochure you also see that our main text today is Mark chapter 9. We'll read from verse 14 up to 29. However, the verse I want us to start with is verse 24. So maybe let's just read Mark chapter 9 and read verse 24.
Reading from the book of Mark, Mark chapter 9, verse 24.
Verse 24.
Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief.
Do you have the English Standard Version? I want us to compare the two versions.
The standard one is not. You have it first?
Okay, I think I can just read. On verse 24, it says, immediately the father of the child cried out and said, I believe, help my unbelief. So, let's think about this. We have this particular father who has a child. Now we'll read the entire story because there are a couple of things I want us to take out of that. But at this particular point, the father is saying this to Jesus after Jesus had said something, and then his response was, I do believe, help my unbelief. It's essentially the same thing which our title is pointing to. He's saying, I believe, but at the same time he's also asking Jesus to help his unbelief. In the version that our brother was reading, and other versions, it's written, I do believe, help me believe some more. Now, I personally think this is the most honest prayer a person can pray. And why is that? Because beneath the contradiction that we can see, there's actually something that is very deep about how us as human beings are. What this verse is telling us is that faith is not an on and off thing. When you say I believe, it's not either you believe or you don't. There are some things you can claim, this is something I believe, this is something I don't. For instance, you can say, I believe there is God. Just like equally someone can say, I believe there is no God. That is something that is either here or there. You can't have it both ways. However, in this particular case, there is something that this particular father was trying to communicate when he said, I believe, but also help my unbelief. which is something I want us to look at. So to properly understand this, let's go ahead and read the entire passage. Let's understand the context, and then we can start to try to dig deep and see why he had to say this. So just to start with, this is the time when Jesus had gone to the mountain for the famous transfiguration. So Jesus has met Elijah, I think, and Moses on the mountain, and he's coming back. So on his way back, he finds a crowd of people. So let's read starting from verse 14. So the way we're going to read this, we'll also be looking at the three Gospels, because the same account has been written in the three Gospels, but the focus is different. So what we'll try to do is we read it in Mark as our main text, but we'll also be complementing with Luke and Matthew so that we can properly understand what was happening. Because sometimes we can be reading these passages but not properly getting what the point was. So let's start with Mark chapter 9, starting at verse 14.
Reading from the book of Mark, Mark chapter 9, from verse 14.
Verse 14.
The subtitle reads, Jesus heals a boy possessed by an impure spirit. Reading from 14. When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them, and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as all the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. 16. What are you arguing with them about? He asked. A man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. 19.
Okay, so you can stop there for now. So this is the scene that we have. It says Jesus is coming down from the mountain, and then he sees a cloud of people. And then the people are coming to him. Now they have seen someone they know will get answers from. But one peculiar thing stood out to him. He found the people arguing. So he's asking, why are you people arguing? And someone, here it says, and someone from the cloud answered him, Teacher, I brought my son. Now, just reading this, you'd think, okay, maybe these people were over there arguing, and then someone just stood up and then he was shouting from over there. But when we read the same passage in Matthew, maybe let's just go there. Matthew chapter 17.
Matthew 17.
Yeah, let's start from verse 14.
From verse 14 as well.
Yes.
The subtitle reads, Jesus heals a demon-possessed boy. 14. When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. 15. Lord, have mercy on my son, he said.
You can stop there. So you can see the way it's recorded in Matthew. It says, the man came to Jesus and knelt before him. But this is the same account. Mark is reporting the same account. Matthew is reporting the same account. We can also read it in Luke. They are both reporting the same account. But here it says the man actually came and knelt before Jesus. So Jesus is over here wondering, why are you people arguing? And then this man comes and he kneels before Jesus and he says, please help my son. And he continues to say, my son has a demon. And this is what it does. It causes him to do this, it causes him to do this, it causes him to do this. But here is where it gets even more interesting. He says, I was coming here so that I can bring this child to you. But he was at the mountain. So he says, I brought the child to your disciples so they can exorcise him. But they failed. Now, let's remember this. By the time this father is saying this, the disciples had been doing this exorcism thing for a while. It's not like this was their first rodeo. We can see this. If we read from the book of Mark chapter 6 verse 7. Let's read.
Come again, the verse, Mark.
Chapter 6, verse 7.
Reading from the book of Mark, chapter 6, and reading at verse 7. Mark 6, verse 7. Calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits.
Let's go up to 13.
These were his instructions. Take nothing for the journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Wear sandals, but no extra shirt. 10. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that town. And if any place will not welcome you or listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them.
You can
12.
jump to 13.
Verse 13. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them.
Okay, so we can see that it's recorded. By the time this father was reporting this to Jesus, that your disciples have failed to heal my son. It's not like the disciples were new. They had been doing this already. Jesus had already commissioned this. He had sent them out, go, this is what you can do. And here it says, they had actually healed people. They had exorcised other people. But on this particular occasion, they failed. So this is what the people were arguing about. And this is not the only place we can find where Jesus or these disciples had managed to heal people. We can read several other accounts. But on this particular account, they failed. Now, let's think about this from the perspective of the Father. When we read the same passage in Luke, there's another thing that I want us to appreciate. So let's go to Luke chapter 9, verse 37. Because in Matthew and in Mark, the only thing they report is there was a father who brought a son. What does it say in Luke?
Luke 9, verse 37.
Yes.
On 37 again. The next day, when they came down from the mountain, a large crowd met him. 38. A man in the crowd called out, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he is my only child."
You can see it. Now, here's another detail we probably missed. Because in Matthew and Mark it's not reported. It says, the father went and said, "Teacher, can you please look at my son, for he is my only son." So this person has a son who has been struggling since he was born. And he comes to Jesus, he says, "He is my only son." Now, when we understand all of this, let's have it in mind so that when we reach to the time when this father is saying, "I believe, help my unbelief," we should understand why he is both saying he believes but also asking Jesus to help his unbelief. Please continue reading from Mark. I think we were on verse 18.
We should
So
go.
you can, Mark chapter 9, we're on verse 18.
Mark chapter 9. The verse again?
18.
18. Reading from 18, continuing, that is. So, whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not.
So, yeah, you can just pause for a minute. So, we see that in this particular case, here is what we have. We have a crowd of people, which includes religious leaders. It includes Jesus' disciples. We have this father. The disciples at this point are embarrassed because they have failed to heal this child. The father is desperate. And what else? We still have the child suffering. So this is what we have. This is what Jesus walks into. And what does he do? He is told that this is what happened. We asked your disciples, they failed. And on verse 19, he answers. What does he say?
Verse 19. "You unbelieving generation," Jesus replied, How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me.
You can pause there. So now Jesus is screaming at them. Huh? You faithless generation. Why would he say that? I mean, even for you and me, if we think about it, it's like if I was to send someone today, I give them all of the authority they need, everything they need to do what they need. You can go, you can heal, you can do this. I give you all the authority. Today they go, they do it just fine. Tomorrow someone comes, they bring a kid who is sick, and you fail. You as a teacher, you should scream. So that's what Jesus is saying. But he's not just saying this to the disciples, he's saying it to everybody. You faithless generation, how long shall I bear with you? To the disciples, he's saying, I gave you all of the power you needed to do this. Why would you fail? You had everything you needed. You cannot say you didn't teach us. You cannot say I didn't give you authority. I even gave you instructions of how to do this. Why would you fail? To the rest of the religious leaders, why? If you are leaders, why would you be here arguing? Because that's what stood out to him. The first thing he said is, why are you arguing? So he's telling them, you religious leaders, why would you be arguing? You have a child who is suffering. What's the point in arguing? And he continues to say, how long am I to bear with you? And then he says, bring him to me. So then let's go to 20.
Verse 20.
Verse 20.
So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into the convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. 21. Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, he answered. 22. It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him, but if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us.
You can stop there for a minute. And so this is what is happening. After he scolds them, he asks them to bring the child to him. And immediately, when he saw Jesus, it says, the spirit, it took hold of the boy again. Immediately, it convulsed the boy. He fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. So this is the scene that is unfolding in front of the entire crowd. And he says, Jesus is now asking the father, how long has this been happening? And the father is saying, from childhood. And he continues to say what happens. It has often cast him into fire, it does this, it does this. And then finally he says, have compassion on us and help us, if it's possible. And that was the problem. And let's think about this from what the father is now feeling. This is a father who was coming from home with hope. I have a child, I'm going there, he will get healed. He goes there, the people who are supposed to help him are failing. And so Jesus comes, this is what he's telling him now. My son has been sick from childhood. If it's possible, please help us. And then this is where now that statement is coming into the picture. Because this father knows that Jesus can heal him. He knows this. When he was coming, that's the hope he had. But now that he has seen what the disciples did, he has new feelings. And that's why he's saying, if it's possible, help us. And then Jesus responds again. At this particular point, Jesus is not saying, okay, I know this is what happened, I'll try to understand. No, not yet. But he says, what? You can read. What does Jesus say next?
Reading from verse 23 now. If you can, Jesus asked, or Jesus said, everything is possible for one who believes.
Pause there for a minute. And so Jesus is coming to him again. He's saying, if you can, you're asking me if I can. No. The question is not about whether I can. He's saying everything is possible for anyone who believes. Not for someone, not for a particular one, but for anyone who believes. It's not about whether I have the capacity. That is granted. but it's about whether you believe. And so, the Father is now coming to the verse we just read. You can read it again.
23 again.
Yes.
If I can, said Jesus, everything is possible for one who believes. 24.
24.
Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief.
So now we get the point why the father was saying this. Because he now had the signs. He had seen what has happened. The scribes were there. They did nothing. All they did was argue. The disciples were there. They tried. They failed. He had seen all of it. Now Jesus is telling them, he is telling him, for your son to be healed, all you have to do is believe. But if he just comes and says, I do believe, and he leaves it there, he will be dishonest. That's what this is saying. So he comes clean to Jesus. He is trying to be as honest as possible. So he's telling Jesus, I want to trust you. I do trust you. But I'm struggling. Why is he struggling? Because the context of the matter, what he had seen, had given him reasons to have a little bit of doubt, to struggle with his faith, because he had seen what the disciples had failed to do. So he's telling Jesus, please, I do believe, but you can also help me to believe some more. And this is one of the problems we as Christians face all the time. In our walk of faith, in our Christian lives, we face different circumstances. Our Christian lives run into different obstacles. All of those things shape the way we look at God. How I look at God today and how I'm going to look at him tomorrow will be different based on the circumstances I'm passing through. The problem is, most of us do not want to accept that our faith is tried. So we pretend. What kills faith, what blocks us from getting what God wants for us, it's not particularly that God cannot do it, no. It's not particularly that our doubt is without merit, no. It is the mere point that we refuse to be honest with God. Where we are struggling, we fail to acknowledge to God that I know, I believe, but I'm struggling with this. So just to drive the point home, maybe the point would be if Jesus had already told this father that this is possible if you believe, and then the father is saying, I do believe, but I also have some level of unbelief. What did Jesus do then? Did he say, okay, no, you see, I told you have to believe, so go away. What happened? Just read. What happened?
24.
Yes?
Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe, help me overcome my unbelief. 25. When Jesus saw that a crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the impure spirit. You deaf and mute spirits, he said, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again. 26.
You can pause there. So this is what happens. You see, now the father tells Jesus, I do believe, but please help my unbelief. Jesus did not say, okay, you still have some bit of unbelief in you, so I'm not doing this. No. He meets the father in his struggles. He rebukes the spirit and he heals the boy. Why? Because the father was honest. His faith was genuine. And this is the next point which we'll look at. Why did the disciples fail? Because the reason the disciples failed is the exact reason why the father got the answer that was needed. As we had read, the disciples had already done this. They had the experience, they had success stories, because they reported to Jesus, when we went, demons could obey us, we could heal people. So they knew they could do this, but on this particular instance, they failed. So what happened? Why did they fail? So the first lesson I wanted us to appreciate today is that even in our struggles, let's be honest with God. Let's not pretend that everything is fine. When you are struggling with your faith, tell God you are struggling. He will meet you in your struggles. What kills faith is dishonesty. God will meet you right there where you are struggling. So let's look at why the disciples failed. So when we continue on Mark, we go on verse 28. We just jump to 28. What does it say? And 29.
All right. Reading from verse 28, 29.
Yes.
After Jesus had gone indoors, the disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "This kind can come out only by prayer."
So, privately now, he has healed the boy. Jesus goes into some room and then the disciples go to him. "Teacher, why did we fail to drive that particular demon out?" So the way Mark reports it, he just says, Jesus says, that kind can only be driven out by prayer. But let's look at the details. Let's go to Matthew. Let's read the same passage in Matthew, because now Matthew is pointing to the actual reason why the disciples failed. And that reason is very important. So let's read Matthew chapter 17.
Matthew 17.
Let's start from verse 19.
Reading from verse 19 of the book of Matthew chapter 17. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" 20. He replied, because you have so little faith."
Pause there for a minute. So this is the first thing Jesus says to them. There he just said, this kind can be driven out by prayer. But as we had said, the disciples had already been doing this. They had already been exorcising demons. They had already been healing people. The assumption is they knew that the only way they can communicate with God is prayer. But they failed. So here, Jesus is saying, because of your little faith. Sometimes we get used to things and we take them for granted. We forget the source and we start believing in the authority we have. It's like when you are delegated. Someone delegates your authority, you still have to know where you are getting that power. If I delegate my duties to you, that power still rests in me. You are only an extension of me. Now these people had forgotten where they were getting their power. They had little faith. They were doing this out of practice. This is how we do it. And they failed. So Jesus is pointing that to them. You failed because you had little faith. That little faith means even though they were trying to pray, their prayer was not what was expected. He continues. What does he say?
20, I'll just take it again.
Yes.
He replied, because you have so little faith, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move.
So, finish.
Nothing will be impossible for you.
And so Jesus is finishing this to them. He's saying, if your faith was like a mustard seed, he says, if you have faith like a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will obey you. The Father had the faith like a mustard seed. It was genuine faith. You don't need a very, very huge amount of faith to get things done with God. You need very small faith, very genuine, on an infinitely powerful God to get things done. That's what Jesus is telling them. You only have to believe in God genuinely enough, and things will happen. So he's telling them, if you have faith like a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here and go there, it will obey you. The Father had faith like a mustard seed. he was genuine to Jesus. I believe. Help me believe some more. The same thing goes to you, the same thing goes to me. When we meet God in our prayers, let's be genuine. Let's acknowledge our struggles. Let's acknowledge our strengths. Let God deal with the actual problems we have, not the ones that are perceived. Let's give God the control he needs in our lives. Actual control. Don't put him somewhere in a very small room. This is the only part of my life that God has access to. Let's be honest with him. Our honesty is what will drive our faith. Let's have genuine faith. That genuine faith is what will move mountains. Because the God we praise, the God we worship, is an infinitely powerful God. We only need a very small amount of genuine faith. May to God be the glory today and forevermore. Amen.
To God be the glory, great things he has done. So loved he the world that he gave us his son. Oh,